Welcome back to the Unhinged Addiction. I'm your host, Eric Zink, and on this episode, why I started using substances and how I got into using substances and how I became an addict, I guess you could essentially say. If you haven't followed me before, hit the like and follow button. Unhinged Addiction is my podcast. I share a lot about addiction with others and getting sober. When it comes to, if you follow me on social media, I'm the Mr. Impulsive on Instagram. I'm the Mr. Impulsive on TikTok. Eric B. Zink here on YouTube and Eric Zink on Facebook. Or go to ericbzink.com. But if you've watched my stuff, a lot of people will always ask me, how did you know you were an addict? Or how did you get into your addiction? And it's hard to always say. I think it's the hardest question, is when people ask you, hey, when did you know you were an addict? Because you never just wake up one day and you go, wow, I'm an addict. Okay, what do I do now? You're always in denial. And it starts, I really want to say with peer pressure, but it's not like the DARE peer pressure. That's the thing I always laughed about was like the DARE program made me think that, kids are going to be offering me weed and free drugs and stuff. And peer pressure really is like us being with others or hanging out with others and they do a substance. We aren't like pressured into doing it, but like we want to fit in. We want to have this experience, with our friends. We want to be one of them in a sense. And it's almost like we put our own pressure on ourselves to fit in. And when it comes to, starting off like with me, it was just sneaking some cigarettes or a cigar. And then it moved to alcohol and then it moved to weed. And it just went up from there, and it wasn't like anyone ever forced me to do any of this. And it wasn't anything that there was like this mythical power that drove me to it. I wanted the experience. I wanted to have friends. It's an easy way to connect with people. I mean, when you're a teenager and your friends are you're going to get an 18 pack. Like, yeah, you want to have a couple beers with your friends and like have this experience hanging out, at the area where they're building houses or whatever, or some construction site, and you're all drinking, a couple beers, and you had like this experience, and it's like this bond that you get all of a sudden with kids and your friend group, and you want to be part of that, and that's kind of what it was like for me. I started drinking at a young age, and it wasn't to get messed up. It wasn't really to numb anything. It was just I wanted to kind of fit in, and I realized really easily with alcohol. It was an easy way to fit in. It was an easy way to make friends. It was fun, and it wasn't like that deep. That's the way that I think I really looked at it a lot. Is it wasn't really that deep. I'm just getting drunk. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm underage. If I get in trouble, it's like a slap on the wrist, and I'll stop or whatever it was. Like you never really take it that seriously. And as time kind of progresses, like, there were warning signs of like, hey, this is probably something I'm going to lose control of. I mean, you're not supposed to be drinking in high school, at school, and passing out in classrooms. And that was something that I would do, is I would pass out in classrooms sometimes. But again, it was just alcohol. You're a teenager, you're going to live forever. And I didn't really look at it ever as an addiction. It was just something fun to do. Weed, that was kind of like even a little darker and more dangerous, because that was illegal. Alcohol's like, it's legal as long as you're over 21. And just even how like adults look at it, like you get busted drinking and you get yelled at and in trouble, but like nothing major happens from it. Weed was in Michigan at the time was illegal. This is back in the 90s. And so it was like, it was dangerous and it was like a little risky. And you kind of get off as that as a kid, and you want to fit in, you want to be a little gangster, whatever. And that's how I looked at it. Like, again, I never looked at any of this stuff as like super deep stuff. I never thought of any consequences of anything that I did. I never thought of any dangers of anything I did. I was going to live forever. I mean, I think that's how we are as kids. We kind of think we're Superman and we're going to live forever. You don't have like a mortality clock that you're like, dude, now I'm 45 and I'm thinking to myself, dude, if I can be in the best shape of my life for like the next 10 to 15 years and live my best life, I'm all in. And that's what I got left. Like, that's kind of how, and then I'm going to be in my 60s. And then I know by facts it's going to go downhill faster than it has. Like, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm not in my 30s anymore. And so you do have like this mortality clock, I think, that kind of starts kicking in. Where when you're a teenager, you don't. And so you're going to live forever. You're not thinking of any of the consequences of anything that you're doing. And For me, I just kind of like drinking all of a sudden, and it made me feel normal. I think that was one of the scariest things, though, too, is over time, it made me feel normal. It slowed me down. It calmed me down. It put my walls down. I felt like I could be more myself. And it's really hard when you're an ADHD kid. They didn't know a lot about ADHD back then and ADD. They had both of those diagnoses still. I got onto Ritalin, and that stuff helped me with my grades and stuff, but it didn't help me fit in. And man, alcohol just kind of made me feel normal. Like I could be myself and my walls would come down and I could be funny and sarcastic and like my personality would show through and I wouldn't overthink it and like be the weird kid in the corner I felt. And so, alcohol just played that role in my life. And it was fun to go to parties. It was fun to drink. And every now and then, I would smoke weed and I would get high. And again, never really like a feeling like I chased after. It was just something kind of to do. And it was like, sure. I enjoy LSD way more than I did weed by any means. I was an acid freak. Microdots I would do. Those would come through Charlotte, Michigan every now and then. Acid would come through so you get the little tabs of paper. And I mean, the first time I ever dropped acid was in high school. And I dropped acid because I had a friend of mine who just dropped acid in the bathroom. And he was like, dude, I just dropped acid. I was like, dude, I want to drop acid too. He's like, dude, I got another tab if you want to buy it from me. And I bought it from him and I dropped acid in high school. That was the first time I dropped it. And I liked how it made me feel. It like disassociated me from everything. And I could see cool like visuals and just felt great. And my sensory was like off the charts. So I actually was more attracted to that drug than I was anything else. Plus it allowed me almost like drink more. So I did a lot of acid in high school, did a lot of LSD in high school. That would, like, if you were to say, hey, what was your drug of choice as a teenager? It was that, but it was like one of those sociable, fun, like we're all tripping, all eating mushrooms, all watching shit, like deals together. That's what it was, man. We're kids. That's just the way that I always looked at it. And it slowly would progress. I mean, I did try cocaine once in high school. Never tried crystal meth. And never even at that time even really realized like Ritalin and even later on Adderall is an amphetamine salt, which is somewhat similar to meth. I mean, dioxin is the crystal meth prescription for ADHD. It's illegal. And it says methamphetamine on it. But there's about 16,000 prescriptions a year. It's not very common. But I didn't really realize that Adderall is actually a massive stimulant drug. And that's one of the things I think that changes and warps your brain a little bit even later on in life is the medications that you're on. Because as ADHD people, like different things that produce dopamine affect us differently. And this was something I didn't know how my brain was different than everybody else. Like I knew I was different. I knew I was really smart, but I had a lot of hard time focusing. And if I could be focused, I was smarter than everybody else. But that was the key, was me getting focused. And that was the hard thing for me, was to actually get focused. So, like, I liked alcohol. I liked being a teenager. And I liked kind of just fitting in. Like, for a very long time in high school, I didn't really feel like I fit in very well. It wasn't until the end of my 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade year did I really feel like I fit in. And, I didn't mature very well. Again, when you're ADHD, your frontal cortex doesn't develop quite the same as others and as quickly as others, which is the whole logical part in your brain. And even then, like I had a anxious attachment style. I mean, looking back, when I got diagnosed with anxious attachment style, it opened up my eyes all the way back till I was in high school. And I don't know if anxious attachment style has anything to do with me really being an addict. I do think it does, and a little bit of where my even addiction came from, because it's essentially childhood trauma. But I wanted attention. I wanted to be loved. I remember I was dating a long distance relationship my senior year. My first ex-wife, her name was Gillian. And 11th grade years when it kind of really went off the rails for me in high school. I was always kind of drinking, smoking some weed, trying to fit in. But man, once 11th grade hit, that's really when the LSD hit. A lot of the drinking hit. I was drinking in school all of a sudden. And I kind of felt like I fit in for once, but I was becoming a nightmare, kid. Smoking, just everything that a parent doesn't want you doing, I was doing. And so I really learned a lot of my addictive traits even then, of how to manipulate my parents. And again, I think I learned my manipulation though really through anxious attachment style. knowing how to express myself to get enabled and to get emotionally regulated. But man, that's when I really just started, using more and more. My senior year came around, and I actually started dating Gillian. She lived in Florida. I was 18, and so she was 20. And she lived in Florida, I lived in Michigan, and we would fly to see each other. I remember, like, I met her over the summer. We kind of started, like, dating, having this weird, like, long-distance relationship. I used to write her letters every week, and she would write me letters, and we would talk on the phone every single night. And so we would have this, like, Thanksgiving, she flew up to see me, and she was, like, up in Michigan for, like, a week, and then I flew down to see her in Florida during Christmas, and then I flew back down there during spring break. And so, like, we started this long distance relationship, and then even then is when I didn't know I didn't develop how I should have. And I remember a girl named Leah Severn. I found out later on, like, she liked me, and that was one of my crutches and my, like, kryptonites, man. As soon as I found out somebody liked me, like, I liked to be liked. I liked to be wanted. I remember I was essentially dating Leah in Michigan, and then having this long distance relationship with Gillian. And it was one of these that, I'm just trying to be a teenager, man. And I'm drinking. I'm just kind of living my life, not thinking about hurting anyone else, doing anything else. And even at this time, like, I wouldn't say, like, necessarily, like, I'm an addict. Like, I'm not dependent on anything. I have experience with a lot of drugs now, but I'm not dependent on anything. Alcohol just was kind of always there, and alcohol to me was fun. Like, alcohol to me equaled fun, especially with ADHD, because, like, it was like I could be myself, and I wasn't focused like I was with ADHD. I could be more outgoing. And alcohol gave me a lot of energy. And if I got hooked at anything before anything, I mean, it was alcohol. I am an alcoholic. I'll never, again, even after just all the therapy I've been through and things I've learned about myself and worked on with myself, I'll never try alcohol again. I have no desires to. I will protect exactly what I have created and built for myself. I'm very proud of that. So in no way, shape, or form am I ever going to possibly ruin any of that with alcohol. But I remember I just started drinking and became more and more nonchalant. But I lived at home, and you're a high schooler, so it's, I'm watering down my parents' bottles. The one thing will say is when I was in a relationship, like with Gillian, even this longer distance relationship, I wasn't drinking nearly as much as I was my 11th grade year. I wanted to put more energy, I guess, into this relationship in a sense. And so I was a lot better kid, but man, I went down to Florida that summer, and it was all of a sudden, like, okay for me to drink down there. And I remember Gillian used to buy me alcohol. Her sister Belinda would buy me alcohol. Like, they would buy me alcohol and let me drink. And it wasn't like they would let me drink and stuff to, like, take advantage of me in any way, shape, or form. It was just like, hey, yeah, have some alcohol and stuff. And I liked drinking. And I mean, I went down to Florida and was down there for the entire summer. Ended up getting a little summertime job down there, and it was fun, and it was like a place away from home. I kind of got to, like, live my best life. I really realized freedom without my parents. Went to college, hated college, bombed out of college, man. I was on, like, if I would have stayed at Grand Valley State University, I was on academic probation because my grades were so bad. I don't know what I was thinking when I took the classes that I did, because, like, I look at my stepdaughter's classes now, and I'm like, dude, those classes seem a hell of a lot easier than what mine were. Mine were not that easy, it didn't seem. They seemed a lot harder, but I was bombing out and ended up just moving down to Florida, and now I was really able to just drink whenever I wanted to. I drank and I smoked, and I didn't do any hard drugs at that time. I've done before this all. I had done coke, I had done LSD, I smoked weed. But man, when I moved to Florida, I didn't do any other drugs. I just drank, and I drank a lot. There was times that Gillian had to pick me up at parties or whatever, or friends, like birthday party. I remember when I was working, and I was so drunk, like, I couldn't drive, and I'm getting kicked out of clubs because I was that drunk guy. I could not control my drinking, and I never understood why. I never understood why people could drink normal and I couldn't. And Gillian and I mean, it caused tension in our relationship. I remember, there's times where at that age, I mean, we're so young. We shouldn't have been together at that time. We're already engaged, and like, dude, I'm 19, man. 19-year-olds, I don't think you know at all what you're doing in life, and shouldn't have been engaged, but I was, because this is what you were supposed to do. I'm moving down and moving in with her and her family, and so it's like you're kind of supposed to be committed. So I'm now just drinking a lot and don't know what I want to do with my life. And that's the hard part, is alcohol and stuff really, I think, impedes what you want to do with life. It didn't allow me in a way to grow up, really. I didn't have to grow up. I got drunk, so it didn't have to grow up. And that part kind of sucked. Looking back at it, I'm like, dude, that sucks. Like, I wish I could have grown up, but I didn't grow up. Instead, I just got drunk. And that's just dumb. Let's call it what it is. It's dumb. But for me, it was just, I'm going to live forever. And I always had these like vision of like I wanted to run my own business and all this. And as Gillian's in my life, started progressing, she's going through school. I started going back to school, and she graduated high school or college and got her BSA, Bachelor of Science of Fine Arts, or BSFA or something. So it wasn't just a bachelor. She got her Bachelor of Fine Arts. It's like an extra year of college or whatever. And she wanted to get her master's degree, and she wanted to be in like theater and film. She wanted to do costume work and stuff. And one of the schools was San Diego State University. So we packed up and moved out to San Diego. And now we were truly on our own. And I think this is where like I was very afraid. I was really dependent on her, and she was kind of on me. I mean, we didn't know anyone out there. It was very survival mode. And alcohol just kind of made things easier. Like if I could drink, I could disassociate and not be stressed. I always stressed about money. I've stressed about money since my like earlier 20s of like I never had enough money, and it was always what if, and what if it was all taken away, and what if I couldn't provide. And alcohol I looked at it as like this crutch. I looked at alcohol as like the solution. And that's why when people are like, the problem is you're an alcoholic. No, the solution was I was an alcoholic. It was the worst solution there was. The problem was I had some mental health already challenges going on and mental illness challenges going on that I wasn't addressing correctly. And I wasn't with the right partner to address them. She thought ADHD was in my head. She didn't believe in ADHD. She didn't believe in a lot of this stuff. So I never went to therapy. Once I was with her, I stopped going to therapy. I'd started therapy originally at like 13. And I stopped going to therapy when we got together. And it really set me back in a lot of ways. And it hurt me in a lot of ways of not going to therapy. But, I'm believing her. I'm like, okay, like I don't need to really then go to therapy, I guess. So it really took a toll on me, and alcohol was just that solution. And I would just drink, and she would tell me, it started getting to the point where she would tell me like I'm an alcoholic, and I started drinking more and more. Like every night we'd come home, and I would drink to just get ruined. I never drank for taste. I drank to get ruined. Flaming Dr. Peppers, and like I would drink Di Serono like straight on the rocks just to get drunk. Whatever I could drink to get drunk. And we moved into a house, and that was the hard thing. I guess I never really learned to have my voice in life. And I remember we bought a house, and our mortgage at the time was like $2,700. And this is back in like the early 2000s. Like there's no way I should have had a mortgage that was like $2,700. But it was in Southern California, and that was during the big market boom. This is mid like 2003, 2004. $400,000 house. And like I was stressed to the point like there was no way I could like essentially pay my bills. It always felt like it was always a stress. And so I would just drink to kind of numb it, and we would get by, but it wasn't like we were ever really saving money. Life kind of sucked. It was paycheck to paycheck, hardcore. And sometimes there was a little bit of juggling, and it was like there was no money for anything fun. And that was the problem, is like it wasn't that I didn't want to necessarily grow up, but I wanted to kind of like live a cool life. Like I was in sales at the time. I was selling BMWs. I was doing really well. And I had my first taste of like a good life. We were living in an apartment at the time. The rent was like $900. And I'm making like 10 grand. And so it was like, man, we had money in the bank account. I could go buy stuff. We could go have fun. We could go to the movies. We could go do stuff. And that part I really loved. But then all of a sudden when we bought a house, it was just like I started really stressing out. And it really changed how just constantly stressed out about money I was like the rest of my life. And to relieve stress, alcohol was always there. And that's what alcohol was. Alcohol was like my stress relief. And the more and more I would just keep drinking. And the funniest part was I remember we moved out to California, and I cheated on her when we were in Florida. And when we moved to California, I did not cheat on her when we were together. When we were together, like I told myself I'm going to fall back in love with my wife. Like, I'll make this work. I mean, I cheated on her when I was younger than that, and I'm like, I'm not a kid anymore. I got to grow up. I got to be all in on this, and I did. I went all in on our relationship. I went all in. What she wanted, we did, and I was unhappy though, and I drank a lot. I mean, I remember towards the end before she told me she wanted a divorce. I was stopping on the way home. I was working at a place called Action RV in El Cajon, California. And I was stopping on my way home buying a King Cobra, 2 King Cobra 40s because they were malt liquor, had a higher alcohol content, and a 99 shooter or some kind of 99 shooter because I just loved how it was really sugary and it got me a buzz. And I would get home and I that's what I would drink. And she never really said much about my drinking then. There was times that she would tell me like she thought I was an alcoholic. Her dad was an alcoholic. And she'd be like, I think you're an alcoholic. And I would be like, okay. And I would stop. And then she would make comments like, oh, I miss the taste of like beer on your lips and stuff. And I'd be like, oh, okay. So then I would start drinking again. Like that was my cue to like drink. I don't know. Our communication was horrible, man. That's why I don't think you should get married young because I think your communication sucks. You don't know how to communicate. You should take communication classes, I think, before you get married in general. But at that time I could honestly say I was an alcoholic. I wouldn't go into DTs when I would quit, but like I was getting pretty dependent on it, and it was an everyday thing. It was kind of I couldn't control it very well. And I'll never forget, I went to my friend's, his name was Dan Kono. I went to his house. And I'd always go over to Dan's house. Dan was older than me. I looked at him like a dad. I moved out when I was 18. And I would just find like these older families, essentially. Like Dan was in his 40s at the time, late 40s. And him and his wife were like awesome. And they kind of became like my adopted parents out in California. And I remember going over there and shooting pool and not really hearing at all from my ex-wife. And I'm like, something's kind of not right, drinking. I get home and she wasn't home. And I'm like, what the fuck? But I'm like, whatever. And I knew, like, the one thing with anxious attachment style is you will be able to detect the smallest changes in people. And I was detecting this huge change. I just knew that something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And the next day I remember sitting out on my patio drinking coffee. We had 2 pugs. I had the pugs outside going to the bathroom. She sat down. She was like, we need to talk. I don't want to be married anymore. And I was just like, you got to be fucking kidding me. And like, I didn't know how to handle this. I became very emotional, very angry. She told me I was an alcoholic. That's when I like alcoholic was being thrown back into my face. Like and I kind of, in the simplistic terms, was like, oh, so she's leaving me because I'm an alcoholic then. So if I quit drinking, she's not going to leave me. And I had no problem at that time kind of admitting, like, yeah, I am an alcoholic. I'm spending money every day on alcohol. I'm drinking every day. And it's not like I'm drinking like a beer every day. Like I'm drinking a decent amount every day. So, okay, I'm an alcoholic. And so let's work on this. And I'm an emotional train wreck. I don't know how to regulate my emotions at all. That was part of being ADHD and not understanding that aspect. I had a little touch of the autism. But I was able to admit then that, like, okay, I'm an alcoholic. And I went to AA. A good friend of mine, Jim Cumberland at the time, took me to my first meeting. I got my first big book. And they were like, read the stories in the big book. And so, like, I'm reading stories. And I think I'm like everybody else when you go to AA the first time is I'm a victim. The person that I've affected with my alcoholism is supposed to be cheering me on. Like the first meeting, I'm supposed to see a change in them. They're supposed to be like, holy cow, dude, you're making an effort. I'm so in love with you. I'm so proud of you. Like that's what I was expecting from my ex-wife, and I'm not getting it. And I think everybody who goes to AA the first time really truly believes like the people that we messed up and like we've wrecked their lives, I think we really truly believe that they should be like cheerleading us as soon as we go to AA after our first meeting. It's not like that at all. And it should never be like that. Like you have to get sober for yourself. You're not getting sober for anybody else. And that was part of my problem is I was getting sober to save my marriage. I wasn't getting sober because I wanted to get sober. It wasn't like, oh, I'm losing my job and, all this horrible stuff. I was like, dude, I'm getting sober because I need to save my marriage, and this will save my marriage, because she said I was an alcoholic. So if I'm not an alcoholic, she'll stay. So, I'm going to AA meetings, and I'm reading the big book, and it's telling me how things could get better and will get better, and how my wife's going to like fall back in love with me. And none of this is really happening though. And this is getting worse. And I didn't realize part of what got me so addicted to alcohol and dependent on it was it emotionally regulated me out. So when I didn't drink, I was emotional all over the board. One minute I could be kind of happy, then I'd be pissed off and angry. Like I didn't know how to handle and control my emotions because I'd been drinking for so long. And so she even told me like, oh, you're bipolar, or you're manic depressive. And I remember going into a therapist or psychiatrist and saying, hey, my wife thinks I'm, manic depressive or bipolar. And I went and I actually got back on my meds. I knew one thing was not right and to get back on my meds because it always made me feel okay. So I did get back actually on my meds. But 6 months, man, or 3 months, into my sobriety, like we are fully separated now. Like she's trying to be like my best friend, but she's off having sex with other people. And like I'm hiring like hookers and stuff because I don't want to really like get in a relationship, but of course I want to have sex with people. And then I finally get onto like Tinder and stuff, and I started like dating people, but it was just for fucking hookups. That's all I cared about was hookups. Because I thought I loved her, and I start to finally fully realize like, hey, this isn't going to work out. This is actually going to be a divorce. And, I'm upset. I'm angry. I don't know what the hell to do. Who knows at that time if there was anything I could have did differently. I'm sure there is. I don't know if the marriage would have worked or not. And I don't really care anymore. But at the time, like, I'm very devastated. And I'll never forget, like, I relapsed then and started drinking. And I ended up having 911 called on me. I got so drunk that I remember calling her up and just mother effing her and telling her I'm going to just kill her dog and just being fucking psycho. And I would have never hurt her dog. I mean, she had a dog and then we had our 2 pugs. And I was just a psycho. And so she comes over and I'm just screaming at her. And she ended up calling my friend Dan, and all he could hear was her like screaming. He thought I was like bludgeoning her or something. And I was screaming at her because I couldn't get her out of my way to go outside and smoke a cigarette. And she kept grabbing my chest and being like, no. And I'm like, all I want to do is go out and smoke a cigarette. Like, get the out of my way. And she wouldn't. And I wasn't going to hit her. And so like I was so emotionally unregulated, I flipped around and I punched the door as hard as I could. Messed my hand up a little bit. And it starts kind of swelling up. There's a big break in the door. Finally I get outside, like the cops are there and stuff, and they're like, what's going on? And they see this and they're like, did you hit her? And all. And I'm telling them like, no, I'm drunk. I didn't hit her. I hit the door. I show them where the doors hit. I'm like, she just won't leave my house. Like, she has her own apartment now. I don't know why she's fucking here. And the cops were actually really cool. They were on my side. They told her to leave. So I wanted her to leave, but I didn't want her to leave, that whole drunken train wreck-ish. And that's when I was really just relapsed back onto alcohol. And I felt so ashamed the next day and so guilty the next day for how I acted that, well, what did I do to run away from the guilt and shame? I drank, because it was a solution. And this went on for a little while, and it sucked. And then it even got worse, because I'll never forget, I went out to a dive bar with my boy Devin. Let's go out and drink. All right, bro, let's go out and drink. So I'm there at a dive bar, and we're drinking. He's like, at that time, like when I was getting sober, I liked to shoot pool. And I learned how to shoot pool. And I was like, let's go shoot pool. And we're drinking a little bit. He's like, let's get a bag, dude. I'm like, all right, let's get a bag. I hadn't done a bag. I hadn't done any coke since like 11th grade in high school in Charlotte, Michigan. So I don't even know how much coke was really in the coke from Charlotte, Michigan. Knowing my luck, it was probably a touch of meth with a touch of coke and probably a bunch of fucking caffeine and aspirin and talcum powder, whatever you could mix into a bag, So we get a bag, and I remember, man, he does a line, I do a line off of Esham CD. He was like an acid rapper from Detroit. And man, I did that line, and it hit so different. And I remember just going, wow, I like this. I like this. It wasn't scary at the time. It was like, oh my God, this is a new solution. Oh my God, this is better than alcohol. I'm not really that drunk anymore. My jaw's locking up. I got big confidence. Let's go have some fucking fun shooting pool was my mentality. Like, let's do this. I remember we would go out, we did a few more lines, and we split the bag, and I'm thinking to myself, I have this ball of Coke, and I'm just like, it was probably like 1.5 grams. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, like, this is awesome. This is so much. I'm going to save it. And I'm not going to use any more of it. And I'll do it like once a month. And this will be like my reward for, making it through the month. Because I was struggling like a lot of depression at the time, a lot of sadness at the time. I was really struggling. And I did. I saved it. And then I remember doing it again and doing it again. And then all of a sudden my bag was gone. I was only doing it on the weekends, of course. And then I remember, hitting up Devin again. Hey, hit me up with that plug. Like, let's get another bag, and got another bag, and started using it more and more. And then I would like go out and meet up with like people at the bar, and I would do some before I'd get into the bar, and it just started becoming a part of my life. And I ended up moving away. I moved to San Antonio, and I got away from the cocaine. Kept drinking. I lived there for like 3 months. I met a girl named Cindy online through Bumble. Or it was either Bumble or Match. I think it was Match. And she happened to live in El Cajon. So she matched with me because she used to live where I used to live, and now I'm living in San Antonio. And she was hot, and she had her shit together. And I looked at her like, dude, this is like a woman who like, she has her life together. If I'm with her, like my life is instantly together. And she's like a mom. I didn't realize like this is how much like anxious attachment style now started to really affect my life. And that's I could do a whole thing on anxious attachment style and how that affected my entire life and how my relationships have went. But I'll never forget like being like, dude, I really like her, and I would fall in love with people like really easy. And she looked super hot. And I remember when I first met her, she was heavier set, and I was just like, oh. But she made really good money. She had her own condo. Like I could Ben Franklin close myself on stuff. And she liked to drink, and I liked to drink. And so she didn't accuse me of being an alcoholic or anything like that. We'd drink a bunch of wine, and like that was okay. It was okay to drink. So this is an okay relationship. And I moved back from San Antonio. I was only there for like 3 months. Took a sales manager job at Revolution RV so I could be with Cindy and manage Revolution RV. And of course, I blow up the relationship with Cindy. I start using Coke again. The guy that had hit me up with that bag, Devin, is working for me. I find out my lot porter can get me like blow left and right. I start having other salesmen who are working for me that can all get me fucking blow. And like now I can get my drug of choice. It's super easy. And I started using it more and more. And I remember even going over to like Cindy's house, and I'd be high on Coke. And she'd be asking me like, what's going on? What's wrong with you? I'd just be like, oh, just kind of on one today. Like, sorry, I just got to kind of keep active. My brain's just kind of like all over the place. And she knew I was like on something, but like, again, it wouldn't really bring up like what she thinks I'm on. And I mean, I wish she would have said something, like not like it would have did any good, but like this is when Coke really, I realized that Coke was an issue, like looking back at it. At the time, I didn't think Coke was an issue, but like looking back at it now, it's like, yeah, Coke was an issue at this time because I let it start invading my life. And I mean, I remember I was living with Nadia at the time. She was my roommate, and I was like hot plating fucking plates downstairs and running upstairs butt naked, sweating bullets, masturbating to porn, snorting Coke at my desk and the room that I rented, and telling Cindy how I can't come over. And like 3 a.m, I'm out there carpet surfing my floor mats. Like that's how bad it got. And that's really, when I should have looked and said, hey, I got a problem, but I never did. I always thought alcohol was the bigger problem of the two, but cocaine just sent me off the rails. And I think anybody who's used the substance before can kind of attest to that. Like, yeah, alcohol is a different high and a different addiction than it is when it comes to cocaine addiction. So when you're kind of mixing these two, you become just a flat out train wreck. And throughout my times, like I'd go through these phases where I could stop using Coke, but it was always in my brain. I always wanted to do it. I always wanted to use it. And I would go through these phases of really heavy Coke use. Like when I worked at Revolution RV, I mean, I was having like trailers pulled around so I could do Coke in trailers. and see customers coming in, making sure my salesmen were getting with the customers. And we're all inside. I mean, I'll never forget this. It's Devin, me, a guy named Brian. We're all in a toy hauler trailer by the entrance, and we're all doing lines of Coke, and then like a customer pulls out. I'm like, who's up? And he runs out there just high as a kite trying to help customers. And like, it was just a train wreck of me just being wrecked and going through a bunch of different relationships, super toxic. And I never once blamed addiction for any of the holes that it kept putting me in, except I would watch my life start to get really good, and then I would self-sabotage it. It would go back to zero. It was like I was afraid of success, and alcohol was based on me not being successful or constantly being stressed. Same when it came to Coke, so I had to almost like in my own way ruin it. So it was so dependent on these drugs. And it was just this vicious cycle that I would go through, and it wasn't really until, I met Brandy. And I knew that she liked to do drugs, and I liked to do drugs, and she liked to drink. And man, we drank a lot, and we would have our own little benders. I mean, we'd go on my days off, and we would do Coke together, and I would just get us ruined, and that was the worst, man. And there was no control button. Like if somebody gave me a pound of Coke, I would have did it till I died. Like that's how impulse, lack of control I had. And so if I had Coke on me, we were doing it. We were doing it all. And she would try and even budget it out. And I would convince her to break more out, because then you can kind of convince each other because you're high. And it wasn't until then she ended up committing suicide that I was heavy drinking every day all of a sudden. And cocaine then was that other additional crutch. And it wasn't like it was new to me. I knew that this was happiness. And I wasn't grateful for anything that was happening. I had a girl in my life at the time. Her name was Amber. She was my last ex-wife. She was just supposed to be a fun time, man. It was a bet. It was a $20 bet who could sleep with her. She was the receptionist originally. And I did. And she was all right in bed. She was younger than me. Here I am, 34 years old, fucking a 23-year-old hot little blonde. Life's supposed to be good. I'm making, 20, 30 grand a month right now. Living the dream on my own. I love life. Fuck yeah, dude. Brand new truck. Life is good. And again, just like any addict, my wife at the time ends up killing herself. We were separated. And I just all went off the rails. And I couldn't deal with that. I couldn't address it. Again, I had the worst, looking back at life, I had the worst communication skills with people. I used to think I was the best communicator because I was really good at sales. And that's the thing. I think I was good at manipulating, lying, cheating, and stealing, being a salesperson. Being a husband, I sucked. I will say this, something I'm really proud of now is I will say for the last 2 years of my life, and yes, Candace and I have been together since, October of 2021. But for the last 2 years of my life, I have been a good husband. 3 years of my life, I have been a good husband. And we're not legally married. We call each other husband and wife. I've been sober the entire time I've been with her. But even then, there were signs of self-sabotage and stuff. I think, addiction, again, it covers for a lot of things. Addiction really was this massive crutch, and it created my personality. And that's the hardest thing is addiction created this personality of the victim, of the poor me, of just knowing how to manipulate people. And even when I was sober, the manipulation of people didn't end. The manipulation of people was still there. I still had to manipulate people. Even if I didn't have to manipulate them, I had to manipulate them because I didn't know how to communicate even. And that was really one of the really messed up parts about addiction, of how it really invades how you are, your personality, how you react and act around others. And it took me a long time to even get rid of that. And it was hard. I mean, even as an addict in recovery, you're gonna fight off everything. Especially, it's almost even worse. So when you're sober of alcohol and cocaine, like me, I'm very adamant. I'm not addicted to anything else. I'm sober. No, I'm addicted to my phone. I'm addicted to stuff. I think we're all addicted to stuff. I'm addicted to caffeine. And it's how much am I going to let it control my life and not control my life, and how destructive is it? I mean, nothing I've been addicted to has been as destructive as cocaine and alcohol. And looking back, there was never, I would go through these massive phases, but there was never this time where I was just yep, I'm an alcoholic and I'm a cocaine addict, and this is that time that it really, when you're going through it, you're so numb to it, you're so oblivious to it, you don't address it at all. And I think that's what part of addiction is you don't address it. You don't care. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? When you get sober is, I think, when you really start to analyze it more of like, hey, how did I become an addict? How did I get to this point? And I will say I became an addict because originally just to fit in, just to have friends. That's where my addiction came from. I just wanted to be one of the boys, and I wanted to have friends, and I wanted to be popular, and I wanted to be liked by everybody, and I wanted to be that person, and I wanted girls to like me, and I wanted, and I didn't know how to get it. And alcohol gave it to me, actually, for a short period of time. But then it turned into more, and it turned into truly this trauma and the things that I had as even a child, like anxious attachment style, when it started to really show itself. Because my anxious attachment style started to show itself in my later teens, like 17, 18 is when it really started to show. When I started getting independence from my parents and they weren't always there to self-regulate me, is when it really started to show. And when my anxious attachment started to show is when the alcohol started to show more, because that helped regulate me. And that's one of the things I don't think, we talk about sometimes enough is emotional regulation is really hard, and alcohol can emotionally regulate. It gives you dopamine. It calms you down. It shifts and redirects that focus. Instead of being this little child inside freaking out, you're more focused on getting drunk. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the depression, I think, comes from, even too, as an addict, and the depression of addiction comes from. But man, alcohol was that solution for me, and alcohol helped me go away. And cocaine was just the icing on the cake. Alcohol like emotionally regulated me, and cocaine found happiness is the best way I could describe them both. Cocaine was my happiness. I couldn't be happy without it. I didn't know how to be happy without it. I was depressed. I was angry. I was mad. I blamed the world. I was just not a happy person. And cocaine helped me find happiness as I destroyed myself and as I destroyed my life. And it mixed in with alcohol horribly. And it ruined a lot of relationships. I mean, in all my relationships, I did one or the other, except for the one now. When I was with Gillian, I was a massive alcoholic. Katie, who I was married to, I was a massive alcoholic. Brandy, I was married to, I was a cocaine and alcoholic. Those were what I was heavily on. Amber was cocaine, alcohol, and sex. And then I met Candace, and I've been sober. And again, though, with Candace, I'm in therapy. I focus on my sobriety. I was sober when I met her. I brought baggage in, but not baggage I understood. And that's the other thing, too, is I think we were emotionally more equipped for each other, in the sense that, like, she called me out on my shit. Like, she wouldn't enable me. Candace is the first person I've ever been with that wouldn't enable my addiction. And it wasn't even my addiction. She wouldn't enable my mentality. I was still the victim. I was always the victim in life. Never my fault. I didn't know how to take responsibility. I took responsibility, but like fake responsibility. I would be like, yep, it's my fault. I'm sorry. I'm dumb. It's all my fault. Poor me. I've taken responsibility. I'm wallowing in responsibility now. See? So you're supposed to pat me on the back and tell me now it's okay. And she wouldn't do that. And she would just call me out on it. And it forced me to grow. And I'm very grateful for that. And that's why people are always like, well, what if you and your wife, what if you guys like break up now, or I'd forever be grateful for her. Because she grew me, she helped me grow up, and she helped me become the man I needed to be. And that's hard to admit, man. I didn't become the man I needed to be until I was in my 40s. But that's the reality of it. And I've watched my life really change once I grew up. And that's the hard thing is alcohol and cocaine and all that really stunts your growth. It stunts you as a person. I mean, that's why I've met a lot of addicts out there who are later on in life, and you get sober and it's like, you're not as emotionally like mature as you should be. And you're like, how are these people the same age as me and they feel like they're better off than me, or they're further along in life than me? And it's like, oh, that's right. I never had to really grow up. I was always a Toys R Us kid, and I was always on drugs, and they weren't. So guess what? Yeah, their odds are they're going to be further ahead in life than me. But it's okay, and that's the best thing, though, is I think we do catch up rather quick, especially if you're with the right person and you're really putting in the work for yourself. And that's where I think it's different for everybody. Everyone's like, what do you mean by work when you're getting sober? And work for me was like therapy. It wasn't AA. Like, AA helped me, NA helped me, being around addicts helped me, talking about my addiction, owning my addiction, doing step work, all that stuff helped me. But what truly, truly helped me was making and accepting the fact that I was an addict, constantly focusing on the fact that I'm an addict and I'm in recovery, I'm sober. Like, I made that my identity. And then really working then on myself and going, okay, let's go back to the beginning, man, and where this all came from and how, and what am I dealing with, and really finding out, about depression and anxiety and ADHD and why ADHD meds are good to take and some of the downsides to ADHD meds. And then you start really making those connections and correlations of like, man, whenever I took my Adderall and I was working and I was healthy myself, I didn't need alcohol and I didn't crave it. I didn't crave cocaine. I didn't crave escape as much. Okay. And then when like these things did arise up of, wow, I never really understood this. I never grew from this. I never addressed anxious attachment style. Where did this victim mentality come from? Where did all this come from? Why am I trying to enable myself? And then going into therapy with that and looking for the coping skills and looking for the answers and then becoming comfortable with the answers and realizing what the work is. And that's the thing is like, well, what is the work? And for me, like with the anxious attachment style, I had to really visualize myself as a child. What do I look like as a child? And when I was going through it, I know what I look like. I'm blonde hair. I'm about 7 years old, and I'm wearing this zip up one piece that I used to sleep in. It had like the little booty things usually kids would wear it at night, and I had a little plastic shark, and that's Little E. And Little E had been through some stuff, man. He was a kid, and and it wasn't like he was ever beaten, and he never went hungry. He just never was understood, and he was different, and that was okay. And learning to like have conversations with him and realize like I can show up for him now. No one else has to show up for him because I always needed other people to. And if other people couldn't show up for him, instead of finding somebody and showing up for him myself, and this was something I think it was really hard for me, instead of showing up for him myself, drugs showed up for him. Alcohol showed up for him. And it wouldn't address what he was going through as a child and inside of me. It just put him to sleep and it just numbed it out. And it just got that snowball going. And that was the most toxic behavior ever as an addict, of the snowball of what really leads you down to addiction. And that's why, again, I'm so adamant that not everybody, it becomes an addict because of trauma. I think a lot of us become addicts because, just like myself, you want to fit in. You start off like, they don't teach you how peer pressure is. They don't teach you that you're going to put the worst peer pressure on yourself. Like, you want to hang out with these people, you think they're cool and fun, but they all start doing some drugs, so you're going to do it because you want to fit in with them. And if you don't want them all staring at you like you're the odd man out. And I've been there before. If you were hanging out with me and you weren't doing drugs with me, like, we're not going to hang out eventually. Like, we're not on that same wavelength. And so I started using and doing stuff because I wanted to hang out with people. I wanted these people as my friends. And they were lucky. A lot of them grew out of it. I didn't. And, as I started creating trauma in my life and realizing that I could use alcohol as a tool and as a solution, and not just as a party and not just as a friendship. And this was like, I normalized it almost as like a medication. And that is when I think it really became scary. And cocaine, man, when I use cocaine and I'm looking at this as like my antidepressant, there's something wrong. Like, it's not right, but yet it allows me then to justify it. I'm not ashamed of it. I don't think there's a problem with it because this is helping me. And that's the scary aspect of it, of when it really comes to that addiction and we get sucked down those holes. And so I do believe, when it comes to addiction, yes, I mean, anyone could become an addict. If you held somebody down, especially, let's use 7-OH for example, because this is a great example now how anyone can become an addict. You give somebody who's not an addict, you give them a week's worth of like 30 milligrams of 7-OH, they're going to be hooked to it in a week. It's 10 times to 15 times more addictive than heroin is. You shoot somebody up once a day with heroin, in 10 days they're hooked to it. But that's not really the case. That's not how it typically works. And so I think it's for a lot of people, it works is just when you're struggling and it seemed to just make it easier. Your brain connects the fact that, wow, you were going through this really hard time. This was an easier solution just to drink, and it just kind of made it all go away. So maybe next time it happens, let's just do this again, because that was simple and easy. And now our brain kind of connects it more and more as being the solution to the trauma and solution to what we're going through, that now it just becomes this like, God, it's a stressful day, dude. Like, let me go get a bottle. Until the point that you are an addict, and then you're just so dependent on it. You're like, if you don't have a bottle, you're anxious, you're stressed, you start to shake, you're sick, you're all of this. And that's the scary part of when addiction really takes over, but yet you never realize it. It's like how cocaine was for, I think, anybody out there who's a cocaine addict. I mean, we all kind of vary the same. Cocaine starts as a weekend Saturday drug. It moves into a Friday Saturday drug. It moves into then a Friday Saturday Sunday drug. And then the scariest part is when you use it that first time during the week. Because that first time during the week that you use it, you're like, I'm never going to do this again. I just happen to have part of the day off. Like, we're justifying it in our head. Don't realize that that is our addiction talk, and we are justifying this stuff. We use it, and now it's invaded the weekdays, and it has no boundaries. Like, you cannot control an addiction. But yet, it was always this original solution, and that's the scary part of it. And that's why, I mean, ultimately, getting sober for everybody is different. I always talk about that. There is no right or wrong way of getting sober. It's your way, you know. Rehab is the one thing I wish I would have did. I'll have to do a podcast sometime on why I wish I would have went to rehab and like all the reasons I wish I would have went to rehab and how it could have really helped me, especially if I would have found the right rehab. Refine Recovery to me is like the most amazing rehab because these guys know what it is. I mean, a lot of the owners, there's 3 owners. 2 of them are addicts in recovery. One of them has been in Al-Anon and all this all their life because their parents were addicts. And so, you know, they have a great staff. There's lots of therapy there, coping skills, breath work. Things that happen, like realizing how we get triggered, and triggers for addicts is what we use to numb now all of a sudden, how we slow ourselves down. Like there's so many different coping and therapy and connection and working on yourself and detoxing yourself and then having a plan so when you get out, you don't relapse, and what happens when stuff gets bad so that you don't relapse. Like, they're amazing, and that's why I wish I would have went to rehab. You can download Sunflower Sober. It's on iOS and Google Play. That's a great app. Start tracking your days of sobriety. You have an AI sponsor, 24-hour support. You have, you know, tools and community there and resources there. There's therapy there. There's so much in Sunflower Sober that alone can help somebody get sober and stay sober. It's on iOS and Google Play. Sunflower, like the flower, sober, S-O-B-E-R. And then you can go to AA, Al-Anon. I mean, for me, even the big final part of my sobriety was getting with a therapist. Getting on my meds was huge. Taking my meds how I'm supposed to take my meds was big. But getting on my meds, you know, going to therapy, learning about anxious attachment style, learning about how to grieve, learning about, you know, why I did a lot of the things the way that I did, how to communicate with my spouse, how to like take ownership and like find self-love, how to build trust with myself. And it's such a growing process, and you can't outthink yourself, because I think that's the hardest thing is, and I've been guilty of this too, and I halt my own progress even in therapy, where I'll go to therapy for like 4 or 5 times and then think, oh, okay, I got the solution to it. I got this all figured out. And I don't continue with it where I really need to, and I'm probably close to a big breakthrough. That's why I'm like really sticking out with my therapist right now with EMDR. This last therapy appointment, I'm even going to tell her when I'm there. I'm like, I don't really think that EDMR appointment did a whole lot for me. Like, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know that there's still problems, and I know that there's still stuff here, so let's work on it together. And I feel like I can be open with her that way. I love this new therapist. I really do, and I really respect her, which I think is healthy. So I'm like, but usually I'll go like 3 or 4 or 5 times to a therapist, you know, get a lot of it figured out, get my communication going the right direction. This time I've done a lot more work on myself though too. I listened to a lot of Heidi Priebe on anxious attachment styles. I've had to really back it off because I got like almost addicted and obsessed with like learning about anxious attachment style and all the different relationship styles and attachment styles there is. To the point, like, I wasn't communicating very well. Like, I'm like, I must sit in my own darkness, you know, I must sit in my own thoughts, and I can't emotionally regulate with anyone and all this stuff. But I've backed that down, but I really have worked on myself. And even this saying it reminds me, too, is like I've slacked off a little bit on it. I have to get back at it. You know, making sure that I'm going to the gym. I'm letting myself down where I haven't been to the gym 5 days in a row. I went 4 days last week, and I didn't do my bis and tris. And so it's like this next week I really got to hammer it out with arms. Probably do that on Monday instead of my chest. And yeah, dude, it's a lot of work to get sober. It's a lot to realize that you are an addict. And you realize that you're an addict when you're really trying to get sober. I think that's when those realizations truly come. I'm like, dude, I'm an addict because I'm trying to get sober and I just can't. Like, I just can't stop. And these thoughts in my head just keep telling me, like, go drink or just go have a little bit more and maybe we'll try this again next week or whatever it might be. It's not like I could just stop and be like, oh, I stopped and I'm going to go move on to something else. It was like, as soon as I would stop, it invaded my brain. It invaded all my thoughts. And that's really where I learned, like, I had issues. And so, I mean, for anybody out there, if you guys listen to this, I greatly appreciate it. Make sure you follow Unhinged Addiction. I do a podcast release every Wednesday. It releases 5 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I do one every Wednesday. I started it off. I was gung-ho about this, and I dropped the ball. Like, I let myself down. I really stopped paying attention to my podcast, which, like, out of anything, if you really want to know about me, I make money from social media. I make money from Facebook and YouTube and TikTok and brand deals. And I'm an employee for Sunflower Sober, so I get paid from them. And I'm creating my own app, and I do all right for myself. Most of all my social media makes money. Even my Instagram makes money. It's not a whole lot because it only pays on pictures, but I'll make like $600 a month from Instagram. My podcast makes nothing, but it is the most therapeutic and one of the most enjoyable things because I just get to kind of share and talk my story out. And it's not like I'm trying to like cram it into like this 6-minute video or this 20-minute video. I can just like share with you of what I've been through, and you kind of get to go through it with me, which is a part about podcasting that I really enjoy of like, and it's also funny because people look at podcasters differently. They're like, oh, you got a podcast? I tell people I do TikTok and they're like, oh, that's stupid. But dude, you have a podcast? How long have you been podcasting for, dude? Do you have a studio? Do you go to the studio? Yeah, I built a studio now. Look at my studio behind me. I have one of those microphones with like the spit trap things in front of my mouth now. So when I talk, I feel legit, dude. I mean, but it's so funny how people really think like out of all of it, podcasting is like the least money making that there is, which is really funny. I do this just because I really enjoy sharing. I know that it actually helps people. I've started to see some of the results from my podcast and like people telling me like, hey, I love how you talk and articulate, and it's not like a therapist and it's not clinical, it's just very real. And that's what I share from. I share from lived experience. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. My name is Eric. I'm a recovering alcoholic, cocaine addict. I lost a wife to suicide, my dad to suicide. I've attempted to take my life by suicide in 2018. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, PTSD, GAD, MDD. Those are my official diagnoses, along with autism, level 1. I've self-harmed before. Like, I've been through a lot of stuff before, and I've realized like the more real and raw we are, the more that you just kind of realize that you all went through it. And if I could share with you just a nugget of gold, and I'm trying to get to that point now, like with all my podcasts, if I could share like a nugget of gold with you, because that's, people always would ask like, AA, is it worth it? NA, and again, I could do podcasts on my views on NA and AA. I probably will eventually. But I will say this. I always looked at, though, the positive, to always keep positive about it, of like, I'm going to go mining for gold, and I'm looking for just a nugget of gold. I'm not looking to go out of a meeting and be like, holy cow, this changed my life. It was life-altering. I'm just looking for a little nugget of gold to take in my life. And my nugget of gold on this episode is this. If you're struggling, do a relationship attachment style test. There's tons of free ones online. And find out what your attachment style is. There is avoidant attachment. There's anxious attachments, anxious avoidant attachment. There's secure attachment. I guarantee anybody, if you listen to my podcast and you're an addict, you're not secure attachment. That's the goal, is to become securely attached, where you can emotionally regulate yourself. You can emotionally regulate others. You can control your triggers. You control yourself when you get triggered. You can help other people out when they get triggered. Like, you're very solid, and that's like my ultimate goal. I'm very anxious attachment style. And then I realized how much like anxious attachment style and different attachment styles really come into play in addiction, because addiction is a solution to our attachment style. Whatever your drug of choice is a solution to the attachment style. And that's one of the things I think is my biggest nugget of gold. If you want some improvement, find out what your attachment style is, and then find a girl named Heidi Priebe. Heidi Priebe, she's from Canada. Or do anxious attachment style therapist from Canada. It should bring her up, Heidi. She does a great job of explaining it. I have a friend here. Her name is also Heidi. And I'm going to try and get her actually on a podcast here with me. She is a therapist, though, does EDMR and stuff like that. To do some podcasting with me on, attachment styles and addictions. Because the one thing I found is I could not find any information out there really on attachment style and how it affects addiction. And the more that I started digging into it and seeing myself in it, how I could place myself, was alcohol was so much the solution for my attachment style because of how it would emotionally regulate me when I couldn't find others to regulate me. But then it would drop my guard down and I would destroy relationships because I would go off on those who were supposed to be my parental figures who I couldn't find at the time that I needed to be emotionally regulated from. I can go into really deepness with this, but that is all for another podcast. I appreciate all the people, though, that do listen to this. The views and the listenings I have on this have continued to go up. Next year, I may try to go to like 2 podcasts a week. I might try to do like a Wednesday and a Saturday podcast. I might even start that before. I might even release this one like early and release it on a Saturday. Who knows? Maybe I'll release it next Saturday. I could do that. I don't know, man. I do want to get to the point where I'm like doing 2 podcasts a week because I do enjoy doing it. And I also have a lot of guests coming up. I have Garrett coming up, who is with Sunflower Sober. He's a therapist. I'm excited to be talking to him this Tuesday. The owner of Sunflower Sober and creator, Kobe, I'm going to be doing a podcast with. Keith, if you've listened to Unhinged Addiction, I've done 2 podcasts with him already. He'll be on again. Tom. These are all people with Sunflower Sober, so I'm stoked to be able to do some podcasts with them. And again, if you even want to do a podcast with me, I do them through Zoom usually. Let's do one, man. Hit me up. Go to ericbzink.com and just send in an inquiry. Tell me that you want to do a podcast with me, and we can do a podcast. If you're local to Boise, even Idaho, I would do a podcast in my studio with you. But yeah, I'm excited where this podcast starts going even more. I do post it up on YouTube. I post it up on Spotify, so I know it hits a couple other places too. And it's people helping people. I get really, really motivated being able to share and knowing that like the crap that I went through, if it can help somebody, it makes it worth it. And that's what it's all about. And so if you're getting sober out there, if you're fighting for your sobriety out there, don't give up, man. Just keep pushing forward. It does get better. You're truly worth it. So don't think any less of yourself, man. We've all been there before, and I have too. And for the one doing it, I'm proud of you. Don't give up.